Good afternoon, grade 8. How are we doing? It is indeed a pleasure to be on board with you. Now, as you know, once we get on board, you're supposed to have your laptop charger, your phone charger, whatever it is that you need for this class, because we're about to jump right into our session. How are we doing though? How is the afternoon? All right, it's good. All right, so I'm going to share with you my screen so we're able to view our objectives. Now, if you have remembered yesterday in class, we were looking at a particular reading comprehension. Yes, but time did not allow us to finish the task. So for sure, we're going to continue. Hence, we're going to view the objectives once again. So bear with me so I can go ahead and share my screen with you. All right, so the objectives. By the end of this session, you should be able to use context clues to find the meaning of unfamiliar terms. You're supposed to identify at least 3 pairs of synonyms from the story. Share your experiences, whether it's vicariously or personal, about the story related using the standard Jamaican English. You're supposed to identify at least 2 homonyms from the story. Answer comprehension questions correctly. Identify important details from the story. Identify the elements of the story. Identify figures of speech used by the writer. And you're supposed to know who the author is. For sure, you must know that. That is crucial. All right? So, as I said, I started reading the story for us yesterday, but we never managed to complete the task. So I'm going to start sharing again my screen so we're able to continue with the story. So it says, an honest thief. Are you able to see the screen? Awesome. All right, so I'm going to use the finger pointing and then you're able to follow through. Yes? Every village has a bad man of its own, and the St. Victoria village has no exception. It had Mr. Spencer. Mr. Spencer was a real bad man, and not even Big Joe could venture to cross his path. Besides, everybody knew that Mr. Spencer had a gun, and they knew he had to use it once or twice too. Mr. Spencer didn't ever go out of his way to interfere with anybody, but everybody knew what happened to anybody who was foolish enough to interfere with Mr. Spencer. Mr. Spencer had a reputation. Now, at that time, I am speaking of every morning when Mr. Spencer got up, he made the sign of the cross, went and cleaned his teeth, and then left the house and went into the home yard to look at his banana tree. He had a lovely banana tree. Its trunk was beautiful and long and graceful, the leaves wide and shiny, and in the morning, with the dewdrops glinting silver of them, it seemed like something to worship. At least Mr. Spencer thought so. Mr. Spencer's wife used to say to him, "Ha, but Selwyn, you like to bewitch, or something? Every morning as God send, I see you out there looking up in the banana tree. What happened? Is you woman or something? Don't tell me you're starting to go dotish." And Mr. Spencer would say, "Look, woman, mind your business, hey?" And if she was near him, she would collect a throat around her head too. So one morning, Mr. Spencer got vexed and said, "You're going to have to choose between me and that blasted banana tree. Okay, you can pack up and go as soon as you please," Mr. Spencer said. So Mr. Spencer went home to her mother. Mrs. Spencer rather went home to her mother. But all said and done, Mrs. Spencer really loved her husband. So after 2 days, she actually came back and begged for forgiveness. Mr. Spencer said, "Good, you have learned your lesson. You now know just where you stand." "Yes, Selwyn," Mrs. Spencer said. "That is a good banana tree," Mr. Spencer said. "When them bananas ripe and you eat them, you will be glad I take such good care of them." "Yes, Selwyn," she said. The banana tree thrived under Mrs. Spencer's care. Its bunch of bananas grew and grew, and it became bigger and lovelier every day. Mrs. Spencer said, "They can win first prize at any agricultural exhibition. You know, Ellie?" "Yes, Selwyn," she said. And now, every morning, Mr. Spencer would jump out of his bed the moment he woke and run outside to look at his banana tree. He would feel the bunch of bananas and murmur, "Yes, they're really coming good. I go and give you a few more days." And he would say this every day. Monday morning he touched them and smiled and said, "They're really coming good. I go and give them couple days more." Tuesday morning he smiled and said, "A couple more days, a couple days more. They're really coming good." Wednesday morning, and so on and so on and so on. The lovelier the bananas grew, the more Mrs. Spencer heard of them all through the day. Mr. Spencer would get up from his breakfast and say, "I wonder if that tree all right. Ellie, you think so? Look, you better go and give it a little water with the hose." Or he would wake up in the middle of the night and rouse his wife and say, "But Ellie, I wonder if the night temperature ain't too cold for the tree. Look, you best had warm some water and put it on the roots. Put it to the roots, along with some manure. So long right so long right now." And Mrs. Spencer would have to obey. One morning, Mr. Spencer came in from the yard and said as usual, "Ellie girl, them bananas really lovely now. I think I go and pick them in couple days time." "Always couple days," she said peeved. "Man, why don't you pick them now, quick before you lose them or something? You ain't even go no peeling round. You ain't even got no peeling round the yard. Suppose somebody come in here one of these nights and thief them." "Thief them?" Mrs. Spencer said. "Thief which? Thief which?" The truth was, nobody in the village would have dared to steal. Then one day another bad man came to the village. He was the biggest and toughest man anybody would have ever seen. He had very long hairy arm and a big square head and a wide mouth, and his name was Bulldog. Everybody said, "One of these days, Bulldog and Mr. Spencer going clash. Two bad men can't live in the same village." And they told Mr. Spencer, "Bulldog will beat you." "Beat who? Beat who? Beat who?" Mrs. Spencer said. He always repeated everything 3 times when he was indignant. But Bulldog said, "Who is Mr. Spencer? Show him to me." So one evening, they took Bulldog out by Mr. Spencer's and came up where Mr. Spencer was watering his tree and said, "You is Mr. Spencer? How you get that business?" Mrs. Spencer asked. "Well, this is all. If you is a Spencer man, I can beat you." Bulldog always comes straight to the point. "Who says so? Who says so? Who says so? I say so." "And may I ask who the hell is you?" Mr. Spencer asked. "Where you come from? You never hear about me?" Bulldog, surprise. "Read any newspaper and prints from 1950 and you'll see me and you will see that I always getting convicted for wounding with intent. I is the master of wounding with intent. I would I would wound you with intent as soon as I look at you. You want to taste my hand? Mr. Spencer didn't want to. However, he looked Bulldog up and down and said, well, I ain't denying you might stand up to me for a few minutes. He paused for a moment and then said, but I bet you ain't got a banana tree like mine. He had Bulldog there. It was true that Bulldog had a banana tree, and seen alone, it was a very credible banana tree. But beside Mrs. Spencer's, it was a little warped relic of a banana tree. Bulldog said, man, you got me there for true. That ain't nothing, Mrs. Spencer said. Look up there at them bananas. Bulldog looked, his eyes and mouth open wide. He rubbed his eyes. He asked, wait, them is real bananas? Um, Mrs. Spencer replied modestly, of course they still a bit young, so if they seem a little small, Bulldog said, man, them is the biggest bananas I ever seen in my whole life. Let me taste one. One of which. Bulldog didn't like this. Look, if you get too pufful with me, I bet you lose the whole bunch. Me and you going into the ropes over them same bananas, Mrs. Spencer said. I can see that, I know. Get out of my yard before I wound you with intent with the same very chopper I got here. Bulldog left. He vowed to taste one of Mrs. Spencer's banana if it was the last thing he ever did. Mrs. Spencer told her husband, don't go and bring yourself into trouble with the jailbird. Give him a banana and settle it. Not for hell, Mrs. Spencer said. If he wants trouble, he come to the right place. Let me catch him. Round that banana tree. I waiting for he. See there, pick them bananas and heat them all quick for him come back and teeth them. No, Mrs. Spencer said, I waiting for he. I waiting. Let him come and touch one. Just one and see what he get. A few days passed. Bulldog tried to forget Mrs. Spencer's banana, but he couldn't. Oh Lord, this patwa though. But him couldn't put them out of his mind. He did everything he could to rid his thoughts of that big, beautiful bunch of bananas which had tempted him that day in Mrs. Spencer's yard. And then he began to dream about them. He talked about them in his sleep. He began to lose weight, and every day when he passed Mr. Spencer's land, he would see Mrs. Spencer's watering the banana tree and manuring and looking at it, and the banana would seem to wink at Bulldog and challenge him to come and touch one of them. One morning, Bulldog woke up and said, I can't stand it no longer. I have to go on Mr. Spencer's bananas. I have one of Mrs. Spencer's bananas today, but by the hook or by the crook, I will go and ask him right now. He got up and went to Mrs. Spencer. Mrs. Spencer was in the yard feeling for the bananas. He was saying to himself, boy, these looking real good. I'm going to pick them tomorrow. Bulldog stood up at the edge of Mrs. Spencer's land. He didn't want to offend him by trespassing. He called out, Mrs. Spencer, please, give me one of your bananas. Mrs. Spencer turned around and saw him. He looked and get out. Said, get out of my sight before I go and do something ignorant. And Bulldog said, this is your last chance. If I don't get a banana now, you're losing the whole bunch. You hear? But look at. Mr. Spencer was so mad he could scarcely talk. No bulldog was a conscious thief. He had certain morals scruples. He looked to give his victim a 50-50 chance. He said, I go and thief your bananas tonight, Spencer. Don't say I ain't tell you. You're an idiot. You, Mr. Spencer, called back. Why don't you come? I got a rifle and I will slap a shot in the seat your in your pants, so help me. Anyhow, I go and thief your bananas, Bulldog said. I can't resist it no more. Come as soon as you're ready. But anything you get can take. That is okay, Bulldog said. I taking all of them. Mrs. Spencer pointed to a sign under the banana tree. It read, Trespassers will be persecuted, and for you, persecuting means shooting. Bulldog said nothing more but went home. A little later in the day, a little boy brought a message on a piece of note paper to Mrs. Spencer. It read, I will thief your bananas between 6 o'clock tonight and 2 o'clock tomorrow morning. Mr. Spencer went inside and cleaned his gun. Mrs. Spencer said, but look how two big men go and kill themselves over a bunch of banana. Why you don't go and pick them bananas now and make sure you ain't get none? Woman, Mrs. Spencer replied, this is a matter of principle. I refuse to take the easy way out. Bulldog is a blasted robber, and he must be stopped. And I, Adolphus Selwyn Mackenzie Ezekiah Spencer, is the honest man to do it. Now you go and boil some black coffee for me. I will have to drink it and keep awake tonight. If it's to stand for law and order. At 6 o'clock, Mrs. Spencer sat down at his back door, went with his rifle propped up on the step and trained on the banana tree. He kept his eyes fixed there for the slightest sign of movement. He didn't even blink. It was a lovely moonlight. If he think I making sport him let him come. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock and no sign of Bulldog. And Mrs. Spencer hadn't taken his eyes off the banana tree once. In the moonlight, the tree stood there, lovely and still, and the banana glistened. Mrs. Spencer said, they're real good now. I go and pick them tomorrow without fail. Mrs. Spencer said, look, Selwyn, come, let we go to bed. The man ain't a fool. He ain't coming. Ain't 2 o'clock yet, Mrs. Spencer said. And all that time, Mrs. Spencer kept him supplied with bread and black coffee. He took his food with him with one hand and disposed of it with another, without taking his eyes off the tree. The other hand he kept on the gun, his finger on the trigger. He was determined not to take his eyes off that tree. 1 o'clock, no Bulldog. 1:30, no Bulldog. 1:45, no Bulldog. Mrs. Spencer said, the man ain't coming. Let we go to bed. It's 1:45 now. We may as well wait till 2 and done, Mrs. Spencer said. 1:50, no Bulldog. Hell, this is a waste of our time, Mrs. Spencer said. 1:55, at 1 minute to 2, Mrs. Spencer looked at his wristwatch to make sure and turned his head and said to his wife, look how this damn vagabond make me waste my good time. Then he looked back at the banana tree. He stared, his mouth open wide. The banana tree stood there empty, and the only indication that it had once proudly displayed its prized Its prized bunch of bananas was the little stream of juice that was dribbling down from the bare broken stem. All right, so this was indeed a lengthy story. And the Creole, it was killing me for sure. All right, so based on the story there, I like the figures of speech. What were some of the figures of speech being used? All right, so let me get my screen. What do we think about this story? Was it a good story? I think so too, but the Creole was a challenge. All right, so what were some of the figures of speech being used? Think it's taking a while to come up. All right, so we have the similes. Let me write it on the board. SI. Yes, we have similes for sure. Yes, metaphors. That's META. What else? Beautiful oxymoron. I was somewhat anxious to hear this. Where is the oxymoron? The title, beautiful. All right, so we have oxymoron. Anything else? Irony. Awesome. All right, so what I want for you to do, you're going to look in the story. I've just read the story for you, yes? So you're going to highlight the examples which contains the similes and the metaphors, the oxymoron, yes? And the irony, because we've gone through parts of speech, figures of speech, yes? So you are able to highlight these. So go ahead and highlight them. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask you some questions, different level questions, and I want for you to take note of them and to answer them accordingly, yes? So I'm going to add these on the board. So let me just get a sheet and write the information. So you're going to take off the information as is. All right, so let me just get this information. 1 second. It's taking a while, just a moment.
Jamaica.
All right, so let me share my screen with you so we may continue. So we're going to answer some questions, yes? Fashion world. White jewelry. Alright. So you're going to share your views for this, yes? For number one, you're sharing your views. That's number two. All right, so we're answering these questions, yes? Let me just allow it to be a bit bigger. So you're answering the following questions. Why do you think the author uses an oxymoron in the title? What is another name for Mr. Spencer? If you could change the story's ending, what would you change it to and why? All right, I realize some of us are writing. Yes, I realize that much. So take off the information, giving you a minute to do so. All right, so are you finished taking off this information? Are we finished? All right, so let me stop this. All right, so I'm trusting that you're finished taking off that information, right? Let me continue sharing the screen. Now, for your assignment, what you're going to do, which is crucial for next class, so you're going to take note, ensure that you complete this task, because if you don't, then it's going to be a challenge for us, yes, for our next class. So you're going to pay attention to the elements of the story. So you have read the story silently. I've gone ahead to reread it for you. So you're going to pay attention now to the elements of the story. Yes, so ensure that you complete this. Now, with that being said, you're also identifying any other important details in which you want to share with your classmates. All right, So we're taking note of that. Do we have any questions? I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Do we have any questions, any concerns? No? Yes? All right. Since we have no questions, we have no concerns, then we're going to say bye for now.